Before you publish your next book on Amazon KDP, make sure you know how to set up your listing the right way. In this video, I'll cover the mistakes that lead to a failed book launch, and those mistakes often relate to weak keywords, confusing titles, non-optimized covers, poor description, and I'm going to show you the simple fixes that help you rank and get sales. I'm going to use real book listing examples from our community so you can follow along step by step of what I would do to improve and fix those listings. Alright, so let's get right into this video. And just quickly, in case you're new to the channel, Cleo and I have sold over 240,000 books between our different KDP accounts. And we have a free Facebook group with over 230,000 authors in there that you can also join. And with our self-publishing Titans tools, we've helped over 300,000 authors publish their books on Amazon. Alright, so let's start by looking at the first book listing here. So to analyze these listings and see all the missed opportunities and the mistakes, we are using our self-publishing Titans Chrome extension. So here we can see that this book has a bestseller rank of over 1 million. And obviously the higher the bestseller rank is, the less sales they're getting. And here with our sales estimate tool, we can see they're not making any sales currently. So let's figure out all of the reasons. So let's start by looking at the title. And the title says the Self-Care Workbook for Emotional Healing and Self-Discovery After a Breakup. So that title is fine, but it's really long, and this is almost the length of your subtitle. So that's the first tip here. Your title should always be relatively short and usually only a few words maximum. And then your subtitles where you have more words in there. So this title is already looking too long. As we can see, there's 3 lines of text, which is just way too much. And the reason we want to have the title short and to the point is one, it's easier for a user to see and figure out what the book is about. When there's too many words, it can sometimes get confusing or overwhelming, or when this doesn't get a quick idea of what this book is about. And secondly, also for the Amazon algorithm, the longer the title is, the higher the chances are that you are going to confuse the algorithm of what your book is about. This doesn't have to be true all the time, but it can definitely happen a lot of times. So it's just something to keep in mind that this is just not good for higher click-through rates and better organic rankings. 40 proven techniques from brain science to Buddhist wisdom with soulful reflection questions and action steps. So that sounds fine. The one thing that is good about this title and subtitle in general is that there's not really duplicate words, which is good. So it doesn't feel spammy. It just feels long and a little bit too many words in there. And I do like that we have a main keyword in like self-care workbook. And then just one personal thought on your subtitle. Here we have brain science and Buddhist. And I personally, but I could be totally wrong, but my opinion would be that brain science does not really relate to Buddhist. Obviously, I'm not an expert at your field, but just reading that, I would feel like Buddhist would be a bit different than brain science. But I could be wrong in that. But this could be, if correct, then also a potential reason we're not getting sales, but the rest is fine. So let's look at your cover. So the cover is very colorful and bright, which is cool in one way, but at the same time, when I think of a self-care workbook, this is not what I would think of. I wouldn't think of plants necessarily. And a huge circle also doesn't represent self-care to me. So when doing workbooks or low content kind of books or even medium content books, in most cases, then it would be better to have a cover that represents what the niche is about and not being creative or trying to be too unique. So if you can make a cover look like it belongs in that niche, it will most of the time do much better than when you do your own creative designs and unique ideas and etc. So since this book is not selling, this is probably just another reason we're not getting sales. So I would highly encourage you to redesign your cover. Obviously this cover is fine. I can see that there's a lot of creative that went into it. So it's not bad, but it would just be an overall improvement if we can just have a book cover that fully suits the niche. So that would be my tip for you on the cover. I'm just going to quickly open our Self-Publishing Titans AI Analyzer just to see what our AI says about the cover itself. So under improvement, it says the multiple different font colors and sizes within the title and subtitle creates slight visual clutter, which may reduce clarity, especially at thumbnail size. Simplifying the text hierarchy and using fewer colors could enhance overall legibility and focus. So let's look at the opportunity here. So highlighting the phrase after a breakup more prominently or by adding a subtle emotional visual cue could better communicate the book's specific target audience and emotional promise, increasing its appeal for readers seeking healing after relationship loss. So here it's also talking about having a subtle emotional visual cue, kind of what I was touching on, just making it more specific to the niche. So I hope that is helpful. Let's look at your description. So the description, wow, super long. I like how much effort you're putting into this book, which is great, but this description would almost start feeling too long. And what I'm not the biggest fan of here, the biggest problem with this description is that we have way too many bullet points. So this is maybe 40, 50 different bullet points. So when it comes to Amazon KDP, the kind of sweet spot for bullet points is 5. And I would not recommend having less, and I definitely wouldn't recommend having many more than that. So I would try and see if some of this could be turned into a few paragraphs. And then I would figure out what would be your 5 most important bullet points about your book. And then those I would actually put right below the sentence. Because what we want to have is that these bullet points are actually showing up before the read more button. Because your bullet points are the most important part of your description. So you want users to be able to read them, because not everybody's going to click on the read more button. Someone would only click on the read more button if they're already interested in your book. And to get them more interested is just by giving them quick data they can look at and get enough information about fast. And then just a quick thing here, we have just a small spacing problem here between the words. And the one thing you did well, and I just want to point that out, is you have a call to action to scroll up and add to cart. So well done for thinking about that. Now let's look at your book types. You have Kindle and Kindle Unlimited, which is great. I always encourage people to use Kindle Unlimited because the more Amazon marketing things you can use, the better. And even if profits might be less for pages read, etc., it is totally worth it, because someone who reads your book, they can leave reviews. They can also end up buying it or recommending it to somebody else. So I would really take all opportunities that Amazon has for you to further promote your book and spread it as wide as you can. And then the other thing which you did well here is having 3 different book formatting types. And the reason that is great is because each of these book types can rank individually on Amazon. So you basically have 3 books that can all rank either for the same keywords or different keywords, but it's basically 3 in 1 instead of just having 1 book. So that just enhances your chances of success, which is great. So let's look at the rest here. So I'm looking for your A+ content. Okay, so unfortunately I don't see any A+ content, and this was published many months ago. So this should be live by now. So I highly encourage you to do that, especially for workbooks or low content books or medium content books. Really, really important. You also want to show the interior. You want to show what the person can get out of it. So just get really creative and show as much as you can about your book and reasons of why they should get your book. And then that will also help you get a higher conversion rate. Next, let's look at your categories. We have teen and young adult, inspirational and personal growth ebooks. So that seems okay. Interpersonal relations and emotions, self-help ebooks. So it looks like you did a great job, and that is good. Keywords are really important, especially for the Amazon algorithm to further understand what your book is about. So if you choose non-relevant categories, that's definitely not going to help you. And here we can see that you did get reviews. You must have had some kind of ARC review strategy, which is really good. And in here, it looks like we have a nice high quality image of yourself. And you also added a nice long description. So that is all good. So the main problem here is just your title and the keywords within your title and your cover. I think if those 2 would be fixed and your description improved with the bullet points higher up, I think you would already see much better results. So I hope that is helpful, and let's check the next one here. All right, so here, this is a book that was published in Spain, as we can see by the URL here. And this is interesting because this title here is in Spanish. So I'm not sure why we're trying to have an English title with an English cover on Amazon for Spain. So that's kind of one thing that doesn't really make sense to me. So this might already be the first reason we're not getting any sales. And as we can see here, this doesn't have a bestseller rank, and which means it has never gotten a single sale, and obviously no sales in the last 30 days. So let's figure out what else the reasons might be here. But the first problem is for sure having an English cover, an English title in a Spanish country. So let's look at your title. So Learn to Write book for preschoolers, fun practice with pen control, line tracing, letters, and numbers for kids ages 3 to 5. So the title is good. So Learn to Write book, we have a keyword here. We also have pen control, line tracing, and many different singular keywords. And the other thing that's good here is ages 3 to 5. That is usually a popular age group. The only other thing we could have improved here is 3-5. That is usually the exact way people are searching for on Amazon, at least in the Amazon search suggestions up here. But otherwise, this is good. I like that we have keywords in here. I like that we don't have duplicate words. and the title and subtitle are not too long. It's kind of a good range. I definitely think so far the main reason is just that we have an English book in a Spanish country. But let's look at your cover. So overall, this looks nice. I like that we have 3D elements like the pencil and the letters here. The only slight improvements I think could be made would be having the circle not cut off. And then here, I like that we have colors, but what I don't like is that we have urn in just one orange color. So it kind of draws attention to that, and I don't know why that would be. And then here, ook, that's also just one color, so it's kind of just random. Like this is all different colors, and we just have urn and ook as 2 different colors. So I would just mix that up with more colors, just like right. And I think that will just look much nicer. And then here we have a nice smiley face on the letter A and the letter B. But on the letter C, we don't have that. So I would also add that. And you can have the eyes on top and the smiley face or the mouth on the bottom, or just whatever else you want to do. And then the only other small critique here, which seems just kind of random, is we have a lot of space between letters A and B. And then letters B and C are almost touching. So this doesn't feel like it's aligned. And it's also off center. So learn to write book that's centered or trying to be centered. I guess the gap here is also bigger on the left side than the right side, but this is definitely off center. So it also kind of feels slightly odd. And then here, the pencil looks really great. I like that we have some dots here, but it almost feels random having that on a line below. I would see if it looks better having the pencil and the yellow dots on the C itself, and just see if that looks nicer. And then the only other point here, smaller critiques obviously, is we have the C dots above the pencil, so that doesn't really make any sense. So these are the smaller points I would fix, but other than that, you did a great job on the cover. So looking at your back cover here, I like that you're showing some examples, but for a activity book like this, I would just have less text and even more pages, and I would make the pages much larger. And I would also choose to have the pages at the top instead of at the bottom, because the text is not as important as the pages. You really want to show what your book is about, and obviously someone is more likely to look at the top first. So that's why I would have that there. Looking at your description, we have a similar thing here with way too many bullet points. So I would encourage you to only have 5 bullet points, and then the rest you can either turn into paragraphs or leave them out if they're not too important, and then have your bullet points just below the top line. And then I would also have a full blank space after this line before your bullet points, just to give your bullet points a bit of breathing room. And yeah, other than that, I think this is fine. I would also get rid of some of these icons and then bullet points. It kind of feels slightly random, but overall that is fine. And then here, okay, so we don't have an author image here, so that's definitely a missed opportunity. And we also, unfortunately, don't have an author's description. So once again, another missed opportunity, and we don't have any reviews. So I really feel like that's the absolute main problem here, is that you're trying to sell an English book with an English title and an English cover in a Spanish country. So I would unpublish this and republish this on Amazon USA or UK or Canada or Australia or all of them. And I think you'll do much better. And then you also want to work on getting some reviews. So you can check out like the ARC review service that there is on selfpublishingtitans.com, or any other alternative that you prefer. But just any way to get at least a couple of reviews, that will also really help you. So let's check the next one here. So this is back on Amazon USA, and we can also see that this book has never gotten a single sale. So let's figure out the reason for this book. So here, let's start by looking at the title: Stress Relief Coloring Book for Adults and Teens. So that sounds fine. Having adults and teens can work, but you don't want to have a bigger age gap than that. And in most cases, it might even be better just to have one for adults and then one for teenagers. But this can potentially work at times. But in more cases than not, I would suggest having that separated, because if someone is looking for a book specifically for adults and then they see the word teenagers in it, and a teenager can obviously be 13 years old, and let's say, for example, the adult is 50 years old, then that would be a 37-year age gap. So they might not feel like that this book is specifically designed for them. It might be too easy or not themed for actually adults. So that's just why I'm not the biggest fan of having such wide age gaps. So this might already be one of the main reasons we're not getting any sales. But let's look at the rest of the subtitle here. And it says 50 intricate patterns and mandalas for relaxation and mindfulness, animal designs, large print, 8.5 by 11 inch, bold and easy. Okay, so here this starts feeling a little bit too long and almost like we're just trying to get in a couple extra keywords. To me, this subtitle didn't flow as nicely as it could or should. And then the other odd thing is here, right up to this point, you capitalized all the right words correctly, or mostly. But then here you stopped capitalizing these words besides bold, and then you also didn't continue here. So that's kind of just odd. It doesn't feel as professional and as consistent as it should be. So this is probably not a big reason you're not getting sales, but it can also impact you. And then obviously you want to have the best possible listing possible. And that comes to everything that includes your title, subtitle, your cover, description, A+ content, reviews, etc. So anything that is not ideal, that should be fixed and avoided for future books. And just one more thing here on the keywords. So stress relief coloring book for adults is fine, but mandalas is kind of a specific type of coloring book, especially if that's not in the main title. So if you want to target mandalas, I probably would have put like mandalas coloring book for adults and then stress relief in a subtitle. I think that would have been slightly better. Just one more tip there. And then here we also talk about animal designs, but then we see an animal here, but then here we have like a flower, just a regular mandala. And then on the bottom and top, we also have a flower. And then that's not really mentioned here. So it kind of feels like it's not all animals. And you do say intricate patterns and mandalas, but here the only main keyword you have for the type of designs is animals. So I'm also not the biggest fan of that. But let's look at some of these examples. Okay, so here we have a random tiger that has some green on it. So I don't know why you did that. That doesn't look so nice. Overall, the front cover looks quite good. I have no major problems with that. I like the fonts, I like the colors. Just questioning the animals and the flowers combined. I think that's maybe not the best thing. But then here, I don't like the way these images are positioned. It kind of feels random. We have one big one, then we have 3 connecting here, 2 connecting here, but then these aren't centered. So I would suggest that you have maybe 3 per row, and then you can have 2 rows and make them even bigger. And that will just look a bit nicer and cleaner. And then here you have only animals. You don't see any flowers or anything else. So I almost feel like your title should be like Animal Mandalas Coloring Book for Adults. And then that would be an exact match for what your book is actually about. And I think that would perform also much better. So that'll be my feedback here. Now let's look at your A+ content. So the first image is fine, nothing majorly wrong with it, but what I don't really like is that this page doesn't give you any new information. So 8.5 by 11, that's already mentioned in your title. Large print is mentioned in your title. And then here we're showing your cover twice, but they've already seen the cover. And then the animal is the same as the cover, so it's not really anything new here. So it's almost like a wasted space. So this image here, this is great. So here we're showing more images. So this is important because here a user can see what they would be coloring in. So this is adding value for somebody, and this can make someone want to purchase your book, but then this image adds no value. So I would get rid of this image, make this one your first one. This one is also great. So even if it was just these 2 images, I think it would do much, much better because this is just pure value in showing them what the book is all about. Looking at your author section here, we do have a branded image. The only thing I would change here is that your text is way too small. I would get rid of the circle and then expand your text so it can go from left to the right side all the way. And then I think you can read it, because right now I can barely read this one here if I'm really trying, but this one here I can't read at all. So that's one thing we want to fix. And then here you do have a description, which is great, and no reviews. So the main thing to fix here is, I think, just your title. I think the messaging when it comes to the cover and the title was not properly executed with the flowers when all the examples are just animals. And I would definitely make sure we have either animal coloring book for adults or animal mandala coloring book for adults or something like that, just so a person can really instantly see what this book is about. And then I think you would do much better. So I hope that this video was useful. If you want me to look at your book as well, you can go to selfpublishingtitans.com/review and submit your book to me, and then I'll get to this as fast as possible. And other than that, make sure to subscribe if you want more daily videos. Okay, bye.